Okay, next dinim over here is the dinim of pas and bishul akum. Pas, there's what's called pas akum. The Chacham, it's a rabbinic institution. The Chachamim didn't want intermarriage and assimilation between Jews and Goyim. So the Chachamim forbade certain things that bring people closer together. So therefore, one of the dinim the Chachamim forbade was what's called pas akum. Pas akum means bread that was baked by a non-Jew. Bread that was baked by a non-Jew is forbidden for a Jew to eat. There's something called pas palter. Pas palter means bread of a baker. Now, what's the definition, bread of a baker? He doesn't bake it in his house. Obviously, the ingredients have to be kosher. I mean, that's not an issue, because a lot of times bread, today they put lard in it, which is mamish treif.
What is that?
It's some treif of fish. It's like a type of smearing that, whatever, it's supposed to make it taste better. So then obviously it's treif. Here we're talking about flour and water with salt and, whatever it is, just plain flour and water. Pas palter is when a baker bakes. Why is that more lenient? It's a very simple thing. When a person individually bakes bread in his house and gives it to you, that brings a closeness. The baker in the bakery bakes bread, he doesn't know it's going to be you don't know it was him, and therefore it's easier, al pi din. But Shulchan Aruch says that pas palter is allowed when there's no pas Yisrael available. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. In today's world, a lot of people are very lenient. Even the Litvish world is very lenient in pas palter. Pas palter means baked by a goyish company, but kosher ingredients. I'll give you an example. The OU and the OK, when they write OU on breads or cookies, or because it applies also to cookies, any baked goods, baked we're talking about. So then the OU or the OK will give a hechsher, but it's not necessarily pas Yisrael. Just because they write OU or OK, sometimes it's pas Yisrael, they'll write pas Yisrael. But otherwise, you have to assume the OU, the OK, all the kashrus or chavke, whatever the kashrus organizations are, they don't guarantee that it's pas Yisrael. What do they rely on? They rely on the heter of pas palter, because it's not baked by an individual that could cause a person to have this relationship that you might come to intermarry with them and assimilate with them. So therefore, that's what they forbade. Now,
is heart skin necessarily pas Yisrael?
Generally, yes, not necessarily. But the RCC also used to be, but not necessarily anymore, unless it says pas Yisrael on it. Okay, that's now al pi din. As long as a Jew did something in the baking process, like for instance, a Jew even threw in here it says they threw a little piece of wood into the fuel, and therefore that adds to the fuel. So then al pi din is considered pas Yisrael. If a Jew turns on the ovens, then it's pas Yisrael. If a guy turns on the ovens, then it's pas palter. In other words, because it's not talking individual, it's talking about a bakery or whatever it is. Now, with many bakeries, especially the big bakeries that bake a lot, they don't turn off the oven at night and then they turn on the oven in the morning, because who's usually baking? Non-Jews are baking. The Jews are not there baking. The bread of Mashgiach is not up yet, or he's davening somewhere. So what they do now, they have these things. There's a heating element inside the oven that always keeps the oven warm. And that is turned on by a Jew. And it always stays on 24/7. It just stays on. So, no, today there's no pilot lights. Years ago, if there was a pilot light in an oven or in a stovetop, and the Jew turned on the pilot light, and then the guy turned on the oven and made it hot, so then it's also pas Yisrael, because the Jew did something in the baking process. Not talking about bishul akum. Bishul akum is a different din. So as long as a Jew does something in the baking process, it's considered halachically okay. So as we were talking last week, there's a lot of things that are half-baked. not people. Breads, there's a lot of people that have baked, but we don't eat them anyway. That's forbidden. What happens if you have, I don't want to, just to mention names, La Brea Bagel, there's a company, right, that have the breads half baked, and you have to finish the baking of the bread. So it's basically not edible as is. It's not edible as is. So then when the Jew takes it home and he finishes the baking process, so then it's not a problem, because the Jew is doing something in the baking process. What happens though, if it's really completely edible as is? Even if it's frozen, you just defrost it, technically it's edible. Sometimes people warm it up to make it taste better. So then, officially, it's a shvacha heter. It's not such a good heter to do that. Unless if it's mamish not edible as it is. There's certain, I'll give you an example. I don't know what's on the market today, but there used to be eclairs with the proper OU or okay, hechsher, whatever it was. But you basically, they're completely baked. You bought them frozen. You take them out of the freezer and you defrost them, and they're ready to eat. So that means there was, from beginning to end, was baked by a guy. So therefore it's paspalter. If you care from paspalter, you don't eat it. So there are hatadim, by the way, and I didn't mention this, but when we were talking about it the other, because it wasn't relevant. There are opinions that say that if there's no pas Yisrael available, and the only bread available is paspalter. So you live in a city, there's no bakery, there's whatever. Today it's also a problem because today you import everything from everywhere. Again, even online you can order pas Yisrael bread. But what happens, so there are poskim that want to say that what happens if you have a piece of bread, slice of bread from paspalter bakery, and it's edible as is, so it's not really pas Yisrael. But they write, if you put it into a toaster oven and to toast it, and it becomes better than it was without the toast. So some poskim write, if there's mamish, no paspalter, if there's no pas Yisrael mamish, then you can rely on the heter that it made it a little bit better. But in a place where there's pas Yisrael, that heter is not really officially acceptable. The only question is it edible or is it not edible? That only the company could tell you. What?
Ezekiel bread.
What?
Yechesko bread.
Not Yechesko, Ezekiel bread. It so happens that the last that I heard, Ezekiel breads are pas Yisrael. The mashgiach turns on the fire and they have the fire oil, like these heating elements.
Does it need to be pas?
Yeah, it's a regular bread. It's a meitzi. There was a time when Ezekiel bread, we're not learning brachas, so when we get to brachas, we'll talk about this.
Some people thought it's
No, there's some people that thought Ezekiel bread is either hadama or shahakam. Why? Because it says on it flourless bread, which, speaking to the mashgichim, a bunch of everybody changed their mind from the original thing, because it was like there was one time everybody thought licorice was mezainis, because there's flour in licorice. So they heard, flour, licorice is mezainis, but it's bab maisis. There is flour, but it's only to hold it together, and therefore it's shahakal anyway. But with the Ezekiel bread, granted it says flourless bread, but that's according to government regulations, it's not considered flour.
But it is.
They have according to halacha, if it's ground up and it's not made into flour, but it sticks together, mamish sticks together like flour, that's why it looks mamish like a regular bread. So according to most opinions, it's hametzi anyway. According to, and therefore everybody passes to that Ezekiel bread, those types of flourless bread, they're all hametzi.
Is that because it's more a sign issue?
No, not a sign issue. Halachically, even though on the container, the package, it says flourless, but halachically it's flour. And it's flour and water, and flour and water is hametzi.
If you make a goy, you have to turn on the fire.
No, you can't make a goy a shliach. A goy doesn't have a din of a shliach. But by the way, the fire could be turned on by a kid. A lot of times you have, when you get to Bishul Akum, which is the next topic in the same simon, but what happens if you have a housekeeper that does cooking and this and that, which is mamish Bishul Akum, which is a very big problem. We'll get to there when we get there soon. But then if you even have a little kid that turns on the fire, so if it's a Jewish kid, Not the housekeeper's kid.
But isn't it something about the bread that to cut the dough, you need a Jew to do that or not?
To cut the dough?
Yeah, something like this.
Cut what dough?
Let's say we have a big piece of dough and to make it like for pizza or something.
What?
When we were learning about the toiling, a kid, if you had him toiling, you couldn't trust him. And now you're saying you can trust the kid to turn on the oven.
It's not a question of trust if I see the kid turning on the oven. If I watch the kid toiling the dish, he's not believed to say he did it. But if there's somebody that sees a kid turns on the fire, then it's fine. I mentioned many times in South Africa, years ago, when apartheid was still existing, and everybody had 10 maids. Now they only have 3. But when everybody had 10 maids, the Yiddish woman, the owner of the house, the balabuster, would come Friday morning. She went to the stove, turned on all the fires, and turned on the oven. She came back after shopping. The whole Shabbos was done. Challahs were baked, and fish was cooked, and they baked or cooked, and they turned on the fires, and that's it. And the Sfardim will learn by Bishul Akum. The Sfardim are more Mahmed than Ashkenazim. And based on this, just for the record, if you're a Sfardi and you keep Sfardic traditions, you probably can't eat in any restaurant in the world. Maybe in Eretz Yisrael. No, because Sfardim are Mahmed. See, Ashkenazim, based on the Ramah, are makel that if you turn on the fire, it's not Bishul Akum anymore. By the Sfardim, the Mahmed, like the Sfardish opinions that say, you also have to, it's not enough to turn on the fire. You also have to put the food into the oven. It's not enough for a Jew to turn on the fire. Sfardim hold that Jew has to put the food into the oven. Ashkenazim hold as long as you turn on the fire, you got a Jew guy could put on the oven. Now you tell me which restaurant only Jews put the food into the ovens or on the fire.
They have to be part of cooking process the whole time, like that?
Not the whole time, as long as in Moshe, I'll give you an example. In Kitzur, he brings down what today is not practical. I mean, he says if you have a maidservant in a house of a shiksa cooking in the house of a Jew, you could be mekel and bishul akum or pasfalt. Why? Because inevitably somebody in the kitchen was Jewish and they probably did something, stirring, mixing something. Yeah, but today that doesn't work. The Jews, nobody's in the kitchen except the shiksa. You have other issues with that also, but I'm saying, so then it's not Kabbalah. He writes in Kitzur that most probably there's somebody in the home, and probably somebody came and put some salt in or mixed or did something, but today that's not necessarily true. So it would be a problem.
They can actually warm the food if it's ready.
But we're going to learn by Bishul Akum. There's no Bishul after Bishul. Okay, but there's a lot of dinim involved in this. So as long as the Jew mixes it. Now, Bishul, Pas Palter, by the way, this dinner Pas Akum, only applies to the 5 grains. Wheat, barley, oats, rice, spelt. If it's Pas Kitni, it's like a rice bread, a quinoa bread, or
No problem.
then the Kitzur Pascha is no Pasakum because it's not Elo Shulchan Malachim. The question is today, is it or not, to be continued.